Hello and welcome back to another deep dive. Great to have you with us. Today, we're really getting into something quite significant happening in the UK. We're looking at the recent decriminalization of abortion in England and Wales. It's being called, possibly the biggest shift in reproductive rights there since the 1967 Abortion Act. So our plan is to unpack the history a bit, look at exactly what's changed now, and try to understand the impact, really, for individuals and for the law itself. And here to help us make sense of all this complex information, we have our expert.
Hello. Yes, it's a really crucial development to discuss.
So I think many people listening will know about the 1967 Act, but maybe not the older laws that were still somehow in effect. Could you maybe set the scene for us on that older legal framework? It sounds complicated.
Yes, it really was. You have to go back quite a way, actually. The Offenses Against the Person Act of 1861. That act basically criminalized abortion completely, made it a felony, and the maximum penalty was, believe it or not, life imprisonment.
Wow, like
Potentially, yes. Now, the 1967 Abortion Act came along and legalized abortion, but only under very specific circumstances. You needed a clear risk to the mother's health, for example, and critically, approval from two doctors was required.
Okay, two doctors, right?
But here's the really surprising part, the paradox. The core criminalizing sections of that 1861 Act, they were never actually repealed.
Never fully taken off the books.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They just stayed there. It wasn't just an accident. It sort of reflected this long-term legislative hesitation, maybe a societal awkwardness around fully dealing with abortion rights. And it left this old law hanging over women's heads.
So less of a historical footnote and more like a hidden danger. What did that mean practically, especially lately? Did it actually affect people?
It certainly did, although full prosecutions were pretty rare for a long time. In the last few years, we actually saw a noticeable rise in investigations and even charges against women. There were some quite high-profile cases you might remember, like Carla Foster, Nicole Packer.
I do remember reading about those.
Right. They really highlighted the very real legal dangers and, honestly, the huge emotional stress women could face because of this Victorian-era law. Even when sentences were later reduced or women were acquitted, the ordeal was immense. It showed how these old laws could still have teeth, you know?
That really does put the recent changes into perspective. So after all that time, what exactly has Parliament done now? What's the core of this new decision?
Well, on June 17th, 2025, the House of Commons took a pretty decisive step. They voted 379 to 137 for an amendment. It was introduced by Labour MP Tonia Antoniazzi. And the key change, the absolute core of it, is this. It removes criminal penalties specifically for women who end their own pregnancy, even if it happens outside the usual time limits under certain circumstances.
Okay, so that sounds like a major shift, focusing on the woman herself. Does that mean all the rules and regulations around abortion were gone now?
Oh, no, not at all. That's a really important distinction. The existing medical rules, they largely stay in place. So you still generally need the approval of two doctors. The standard time limit is still usually 24 weeks.
Ah, I see.
Yes, though there are still exceptions, of course, for risk to the mother's life or severe fetal anomalies. That medical framework is still there.
So the idea is to keep the medical safety net, the regulation, but remove the criminal threat to the woman.
Exactly. The focus of this amendment is very specifically on taking the woman out of the potential reach of the criminal justice system for her own abortion. Medical professionals, however, could still face prosecution if they act outside the established legal and medical guidelines. It separates the woman's situation from the regulation of the procedure itself.
Interesting distinction. So how has this change been received? What's the reaction been like from, say, medical bodies or campaign groups?
Well, largely, it's been very positive from reproductive rights groups and medical organizations. For instance, the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists called it a victory for women. They see it as essential for reproductive rights. But it's fair to say there are other views, too. Some conservative groups have voiced concern. Their arguments often center on, protecting the fetus, particularly later in pregnancy. They worry that removing the criminal aspect for the woman might weaken oversight or lead to more late-term procedures without enough checks.
Right, so different perspectives there. How does this place the UK now sort of on the world map regarding abortion laws? We see such different approaches globally.
That's a good question. This change definitely moves the UK towards countries like France or Canada, which tend to treat abortion more as a healthcare issue rather than primarily a criminal one. And, well, it certainly stands in contrast to what we've seen recently in the United States with the rollbacks of reproductive rights there.
A very different direction then. So what happens next with this specific piece of legislation. Is it law now?
Not quite yet, but it's well on its way. This amendment is actually part of a larger bill, the Crime and Policing Bill. That whole bill now goes to the House of Lords. Now, the Lords can debate it, suggest changes, but they ultimately can't block it.
Yeah.
Yes. Given the strong support in the Commons, it's widely expected to become law later this year.
Well, thank you. That really clarifies the situation and the significance of this moment. And thank you, our listeners, for joining us for this deep dive. As we finish, perhaps something to think about. How might this one change in the law reshape wider conversations, about bodily autonomy, about public health, and that constant balancing act between individual rights and the role of the state, not just in the UK, but maybe worldwide too? Stay curious, everyone. Stay informed. And we hope you'll join us for the next deep dive.